Welcome to Daily Confidence. In this episode, you will discover the secrets to go from zero to $100 million, how to create major mindset shifts and leaps in your life and business, the most important things to running a successful business, and more. My guest today is Leila Hormozi. Welcome, Leila.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Great to have you. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Let me do the proper introduction for Leila, and we're going to dive into going about it, how to go from zero to 100 million. Only a short 6 years ago, Leila started her first business on a whim with zero experience. Over the last 6 years, she has started and scaled 4 8-figure businesses, including GymLaunch and Acquisition.com. Leila and her husband, Alex Hormozi, have done over $130 million in direct sales and now have divested their interest in those companies to focus full-time on their investment company, Acquisition.com, which currently exceeds $200 million a year in revenue across the companies. Leila is known for her expertise in scaling companies through creating rock-solid culture, talent acquisition, and customer success. Welcome, Leila.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the introduction.
Great to have you. Where about are you?
I'm in Vegas, so we're here part of the time.
Nice. And what's it like out there right now?
It's actually probably the perfect time of the year because like in June and July, it's like 115. So it's like you're basically walking in an oven or a hairdryer.
Uh-huh.
Once you get to September, it's nice. It's good weather.
Awesome. So let's dive into it. Leila, tell us about your story.
Yeah. So I guess I'll rewind back to back into college. So I grew up in a small town in Michigan, Portage, Michigan, actually. Which is, as I was growing up, it's pretty much, you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, you want to work at the local hospital. Like most people don't aspire to entrepreneurship. There wasn't anyone I knew really that owned businesses. In fact, it was all just like, where are you going to work in town? And at a young age, I knew that I didn't really want that because I saw how miserable so many people were who kind of followed that path and never like ventured out to anything more. And so at a really young age, I started looking at like Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and like listening to everything they said. And I had my sights fixed on leaving Michigan and going to California. And so I stayed and I went to college in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which I didn't get much from that, but that's okay. It was a good experience socially, and I think like living on my own and such. But in general, like college, like I wasn't like I think some people are like, oh, I was like a terrible student. I was fine, but I wasn't even like great. I wasn't terrible. I was like honestly average. I didn't really care. I didn't really think it was going to make a difference in my life. I just knew I wanted to finish college so I could get to California. And so the day after I graduated, I moved out on my own. I packed up my Prius with all my belongings and I drove out to California and moved into some apartment in Costa Mesa that when I showed up, there's like literally barbed wire fencing. And it was like kind of in the ghetto, which I didn't realize, but I found it on Craigslist. And it was like the cheapest I could do. And so I moved there with, I think I had $7,000 and my rent was like 15 or 1800 a month. And I was like, man, I've like got to get something going for myself because I'm not going to be able to like stay here more than 6 months. And I signed, a year lease. And so I moved there and I realized, okay, I graduated. The one thing I knew was fitness. And so I had studied fitness. I went to school for exercise science, useless degree. And then we went out there and I was like, okay, I'm just going to walk anywhere that's walkable from my apartment because I don't want to spend money on gas. And I'm going to find a gym that I can work at. So I literally applied to every gym. And I knew that I would get a job because I was like, my experience, like I've been a trainer, I had a degree and I had a certification. I was like, I'll get a job anywhere. And I did. I got like 5 acceptances. And so then I actually tried out like each gym for like 2 weeks to see where I wanted to work. And I ended up at 24 Hour Fitness. Main reason was I got accepted at like 2 other places that were much more pristine, like prestigious gyms. But you had to basically do an internship for 3 months. And I was like, I need to make money now. So I went to 24. They were like, you can hit the ground running immediately and start selling membership packages and personal training packages. The first day I got there, I showed up and they were like, you need to go get 20 referrals. And I was like, they hand me a clipboard. It's me and like 20 other people that they just hired. They hired like 20 at once. Like, go get 20 referrals. And I was like, okay. And I was like, how? And they were like, just go ask people here and outside. And I was like, okay. I have no idea if this is hard or not. Like, it's like at that point, I've never done sales before. I have no experience with business. I just know how to get people to lose weight. And so I go, and I remember I go around and collect, and I was like, crap, I only got 14. And it was in like 45 minutes. And I come back and I walk past the front desk, and there's two girls sitting on the curb crying with these clipboards. And I looked at them, I was like, what's wrong? Why are you crying? And they're like, I couldn't get any referrals. And I was like, why? And they were like, well, I can't just go up to people and ask them for this. And I was like, I can't, I have to make money. Like, I'm not going to make rent next month. So like, I don't care about these referrals. So the guy was really impressed. He hired me on the spot. And that is where I kind of like cracked my teeth in sales, because what I realized very quickly is he's like, why do you want to work here? I'm like, I have a passion for helping people. Like, I really genuinely just wanted to help people get into shape and lose weight, because I had done so myself. And I felt really compelled to do that for other people. What I didn't realize until I got there was that if you don't know how to market and you don't know how to sell, then you can't actually fulfill on the thing that you want to do. Right. And so I very quickly threw myself into sales and learning that. And it was really tough in the beginning, but I just was kind of like in a do or die situation. I was like, I have to do this. Like, yes, if I ran out of money, I could like move home with my parents, but like that was so humiliating to me that I like really needed to make it work. And so I read as much as I could on sales. I put myself in the situation, and I ended up working my way up to being one of the top salespeople in a short amount of time. And so from there, I gained a ton of confidence, and I started basically in-person training, online training. And that was for about another year and a half that I had like a full roster in person, online. I started competing in bikini competitions, and I thought that I was going to build this huge career in fitness. That was kind of my idea for myself. I was like, I know I want to build a business in fitness. I just don't know what it is yet. And at that point in time, I was also dating. And that's when I was on Bumble, and I swiped, and I met this guy named Alex. And he asked me out on a date to like froyo. And I was like, okay, not dinner. And he's like, well, this is low commitment, so if I'm weird, you can leave. And I was like, God, this guy's odd. Then he calls me, and he's like, hey, I figured we could do our first date on the phone, so that when we have the froyo, it's almost like a second date, so we can just expedite this. And I was like, I thought it was hilarious, because honestly, I was just sick of people kind of just messing around and like not being serious about a relationship. So I appreciated it. So we met for froyo. And on the first date, he's like, listen, he's like, I'm in fitness. You're in fitness. You're super ambitious. I'm super ambitious. Like, let's just do something together. And I was like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we just met on this date, like crazy.
Like, this is going a little too fast.
Yeah. I was like, what is happening? And I told him, I was like, listen, man, like, this is complicating everything right now. Like, let's just date, and like, we can talk about this later. And he just kept planting the seed in my ear. And so one day, I think we were like 2 weeks into dating, and I came back to his house to have dinner, and there was like a binder on the table, and it had like GymLaunch LLC. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, well, I started the company that we'll do together. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. He's like, do you need me to like show you that this can be a thing? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm going to go fly out. I'm going to go prove that we can do this at other locations. And then when I come back, you're definitely going to feel like you want to work with me. And I was like, okay. So for like 3 weeks, he went out, and he basically flew to other people's gyms, would use the marketing and sales that we understood to fill those gyms up, and then would, fly to a different gym. And he did that for 3 weeks, and he came back. And at that point, I think he made over like $100,000. And at that point I was like, okay, well, this works. And he was like, do you want to do it? And I was like, I think I'm sold. And at that point, I'm 23. What do I have to lose? And so to kind of fast forward, from that point out, I joined him. We flew out to a location. He said that he would train me on the first one. And then I remember the first day we had like 8 sales calls lined up, or sales consults coming in person. And he's like, I have to take a phone call. Can you just handle this? And I was like, I don't even know. What do I say? What's going on? He was like, you'll figure it out. And I remember I went 6 for 8. And so I don't even know what I said to these people. Like, I was like, okay, well, it's a gym. Like, I'll figure it out. And so then from that point out, we basically would fly ourselves to gyms. And what we would do is we would do the marketing and sales for those gyms. And then we would fill them up and let them keep the customers and teach them how to retain them. And we did that over and over for about a year, until we realized it was awful and it was tiring. And after countless attempts and, partnering with the wrong people and having those people steal all the money from a location, and then partnering with gyms who then asked all the people to refund, and then they charged them on a different processor. Like, so many things occurred. I think there was about 3 times where we thought that we were going to go bankrupt at that point in time. And finally, we were kind of at our wits' end, because one of the partners who we filled his gym, I got a phone call one day on like a burner phone I had for that location. And it was this woman, and she's like, you won't believe what I'll call him Bill, what Bill did. And I was like, what did Bill do? And she's like, he just stood up on a chair and he just told us all to charge back on what you sold us. And then he's going to say, and then he said, I'll just charge you half of what Leila charged you. And so just charge back on whatever she, sold you. And then I'll just give it to you for half. And we got like $100,000 in refunds in a week. And at that point, we're like, this isn't going to work. We're going bankrupt. Like we're done. And we're kind of sitting there. We're like, what do we do? And I had still had like an online, I was still doing I had like 10 clients online that I was helping with fitness. And Alex is like, what if we just build a funnel and then you just make this into like a program? I was like, okay. So like overnight, he builds a funnel, I build the back end, and we started funneling people to that. It was doing like $1,000 a day. So it was actually working. And then the next day, he's like, okay, I'm going to call all the gyms we have set up for next month and tell them nobody's flying out. Like we're not doing any flyouts. Like we can't help them. Like we're closing the business down. And he calls the gym and I remember I'm sitting there like waiting. Like I'm like, okay, let's tell them we're not doing this. Like we're so done. And he calls and the guy's like, you cannot leave me hanging. He's like, why? He's like, dude, I've refinanced my house. I've tried everything. I've paid 3 other people. You helped my friend by going in and you did this thing at his gym and he's like out of the red now. Like if this doesn't work, like I'm going out and I can't pay for my house for my family. And we were both like you just feel awful when you hear that from somebody and you're like, you can help. And so he was like, all right, man, well, like, I guess we could just show you what we do, but like, we're not going to fly out there. Nobody's coming to your gym. And like, if you can't do it, it's not on us. And he was like, cool, don't care. How much is it? And Alex is like, I'm like, I don't know. And so he says $6,000 and the guy's like, done. And we were like, $6,000 to teach you how to do something? What the heck? So
Sounds easy.
I know. And so we call all 8 other locations and everybody else did the same thing. They were like, I have to do this. You have to help me. How much would it cost to just teach me? And that day we made $60,000 and we needed like $120,000 to cover the refunds. And so we were like, oh my gosh, it worked. And, I remember Alex looked at me and he was like, I think we're still in the gym business. And I was like, yeah, we're like, I think we've just been doing it wrong this whole time. Like we've been flying out ourselves. Whereas I think that we just need to teach. And so we decided to flip the model, teach people. And honestly, because of the timing in the market, because of the skill set that both Alex and I have and how complementary it is, and because of an arbitrage there was on Facebook for gyms, it just took off. And so like the first 6 months of the business, we did 7 million. The second year, I think we did Alex knows numbers, 27 million. Third year was like 36 and it just went up and it was insane. And we built a supplement company off the back of that company that we sold through those locations. We built a software company that serviced gyms and then we branched it out and sold it. And now it services all small businesses. And then we actually end up selling GymLaunch and Prestige Labs, the brick and mortar, the licensing model, and then the supplement company last year in December 29th. And it was a crazy ride. And that was pretty much, that's kind of my background. And now what we've done since we sold those companies, and the majority of them, is we decided, hey, we're pretty good at getting companies to a significant size. And we've done it multiple times. Like, let's try it with other companies. And so about 2 years ago, we took on 2 companies ourselves, just me and Alex, and wanted to see if we could get them to 8 figures and beyond. And we did. And so we said, hey, we have a framework. We know what works. Let's take that. Let's turn it into something and let's do it for as many people as we can. And that's what we do now at acquisition.com.
So what do you do these days and who do you serve?
Really businesses, it was more in the 3 to 10 range. Now we're kind of taking businesses around 10. And then basically the idea is to triple them in the next 3 to 5 years. And then after that as well. So we kind of have 2 different growth theses we put into place with the businesses, which is like, how do we get it from say 10 million to 40 million, 50 million? And then how, once it gets to say 50 million, because that's usually a breaking point, do we get it to 100 to 200 million? Because there are different kinds of growth that have to occur at those points. And so we take on those businesses, we take a minority stake in them. And then we have a team of, I want to say, subject matter experts, finance, marketing, sales, customer success, that we basically do about 1 to 2 months worth of deep dive on the business to come up with our thesis around how to grow it and then how to essentially grow each department so that the business grows. And then we work with that company over the next 3 years, we put a plan in place for the first year. And then each year it's revisited so that we have our yearly plan of like what acquisition.com is going to do. And then what that company is going to do to reach that target.
Interesting. So going back to where you were experiencing those setbacks and, the refunds and this and that, did you guys ever think that this is not going to work? I should give up and do something else?
I think it's like, like I'm like, maybe this version won't work, but I will continue to work. I will continue to
Right.
figure out what would work. And so I just knew, I was like, if I don't give up, I'll figure out something. Maybe it's not this thing, but I'm not even going to find out if this thing works or not unless I keep trying. So I just had that mentality from day one. I was like, I know if I keep trying, then I will figure out what works. And I think a lot of that I took from, like I have my own personal journey losing 85 pounds. And sometimes like you have a month where you don't lose any weight. And I was like, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to try something else and see if something else is going to work. So I was like, the
Right.
same has to work for business.
Love it. So how has your mindset changed since like you were doing 5 or 6 figures all the way to 7, 8 figures and the rest of it?
I think that a couple things, which is understanding, I think that very much so in the beginning, what's required is a mindset of hard work and volume. Like you need to work harder, you need to do more. And that is very true in the beginning. But there comes a point in business where more hard work of just you isn't going to cut it. You have to figure out, how do I get the same hard work out of other people? And that's where you really get leverage on yourself. And so you almost have to train yourself out of you working so hard to train yourself into, how do I get so much out of my people? And that's really hard for a lot of people because they feel like, if I'm not doing the project, if I'm not taking the sales call, if I'm not, dialing in the marketing, then I'm not working hard enough. But in reality, like, the coach doesn't get in the court and play the game when a player's hurt, right? The coach is on the sidelines telling the players what to do if somebody's hurt. And that's ultimately where you need to end up if you're running a business. And so I think it's much more understanding that your focus has to change, and the traits that you need to focus on, like honing in for yourself in the beginning, are going to be much lower leverage. And then they have to grow in terms of how you leverage yourself so that you can get the most out of your team rather than just you.
So I guess you would work hard, and how long would you give yourself like to work really hard to build up to a point where you could hire other people and leverage your time and the rest of it? What would that period look like for you if you were starting from scratch again?
I mean, I can tell you, because we started acquisition.com last January and I'm still like in the thick of it. I have the resources, I have the money, but it's not right for the business. Like the founder who is the CEO leaving in the first 2 years, the bigger a business you want to build, the longer you will be in the foundation and the bigger the foundation you have to build. So if somebody wants out of their business quickly, good luck building $1 billion business, because it's just not going to happen. I've seen it so time and time again. And so if you really want to build, like I want to build $1 billion business, I'm probably going to spend more time than I did in my last business building the foundation, because I want something bigger. Therefore, it makes the most sense that the founder and the CEO sticks around long enough and is the primary operator to do that, because nobody knows it better than I do. Does that not mean that I can't hire people with more experience who have built bigger companies around me? Not at all. I can absolutely, I want to learn from everybody on my team. That's my goal. But that doesn't mean that the person who started it should exit out quickly. So I think that's like a key piece that I think a lot of people kind of miss.
So speaking of working hard, what do your days look like right now? What does, say, your daily routine kind of look like?
Yeah, it changes a lot, because I think what I do now is very different. Like in our last company, I had no forward facing. Like I would never be on a podcast. Like people would ask me, I was like, no way, I don't do that. I didn't make social media. I didn't do content. I didn't do any of that. And this time around, I was like, I want to do that, because I regret not documenting that stuff. A 23-year-old leading a team of 120 people, I only have those stories. I don't have any video of it, and I'm sure I'm much better now than I was then, but it would have been cool to look back and see how far I'd come. So, and to show so many other people what's possible at a young age with little experience. So now what my days look like are, like most of the time, getting up, working for 3 to 4 hours. Then I try to take a break, go work out, come back, eat lunch, then have my meetings. I try to do it like for 5 to 6 hours after lunch, and then get done. I go on a walk with Alex. We debrief about our days, just kind of like checking in with each other. And then a lot of times we just like go grab Whole Foods or like Persian for dinner, and and then come back and like honestly like read, study, watch YouTube, like try and learn, and then go to bed. It's really boring.
Love it. You love your Persian food too.
I do love food.
Well, you're like my first Persian guest, and I'm a huge fan of my kebab. That's like something I cannot give up. over the past couple of years, we became really good masters at making our own kebab at home, because at some point for like a good year and a half, the restaurants were closed. So we're like, we need to come up with our own skewers. So
I did that too.
Absolutely. So you said you get up, you work for 3 or 4 hours, then you take a break, and then you work again, and then lunch?
Then I take a break, eat lunch, then do all my meetings. So my meetings are usually more like 11 to 5.
So I've heard you and Alex talk about like getting up and starting working, right?
Mhm.
Do you like, how does that work? Like, give me about the first hour of when you wake up. Do you like get up and start typing and doing shit, or like, what is it like?
Like, what do I actually do? Okay, I roll out of bed. I go and I turn all the lights on. I hit on the coffee maker. I put eye drops in, and then when the coffee's done, I have like a few sips, and then I open my laptop.
And you start working.
Yeah.
Like no meditation, no
I don't meditate.
visualizing this and that and affirmations of this and that.
No.
You just start work.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
I don't meditate.
So then what do you spend your time on, and how do you decide what to spend your time on?
My time has been decided upon where it's going to be spent months ahead of time. So, we plan out for our business, what is the 3-year goal? Break that down to 1 year, break that down to a quarter, break that down to each month. And then I break that down to what do I need to get done in each week of the month. And I just have like a little backlog that shows what my priorities are. And then I prioritize by that. Obviously, there's stuff that comes up that I have to do as well. But that time in the morning is when I get those like non-negotiable things done to move the business forward. Because, by the time everybody else is up and by the time it's the end of the day and I'm tired, that's probably not my best work. And so I want to make sure I'm always driving the business forward in the beginning of the day.
Love it. And what time do you guys usually wake up, or do you wake up?
I don't set an alarm. So like anywhere between 4:30 and 5:30.
Love it. Love it. And then, so do you create like a daily to-do list, or is it done like in the beginning of the week? Is it like, how do you go about that?
Typically what I do is on Sunday, I go back through everything from last week. I look at all the meetings from last week, all the discussion items, all the one-on-ones I had, everything that everybody else was supposed to do and that I was supposed to do. And then I want to see where we're at from there. And so then I can assign out like, what does everybody else need to be working on this week? So when I meet with them, it's like, hey, where's this? Where's that? What do we have with this? And then for myself, do I know what I'm working on? And I can go and like pre-block time each day to work on things. Now I'm not meticulous where I'm like, this project is what I'm working on for 3 hours this morning. I typically have like 2 to 3 things that I'm working on. As long as I get them all done in the week, I don't really care which one I work on what day. It just matters that it gets done. I'm not that rigid with what I'm doing because I think sometimes I'm in the flow of something. I'm not going to interrupt that because I'm like, well, I have to work on this project now for an hour today. That's not how I work. As long as I get it all done, I don't really care how I do it,
Okay, cool. So it's all preset. Every Sunday you review what's done, set the to-do list for the week coming, and then
yeah, but some people don't do that at all. Some people don't even have a to-do list and it works for them. So I think, what works for me, I say if like someone's listening, just like try it and see if you like it and it works for you, but it's not for everybody. Some people are more like fly by the seat of your pants. Like they know what they need to get done. And like, maybe they work last minute. Like, hey, I don't judge as long as you get the job done.
Leila, what advice would you have for business owners that are running 5 or 6 six-figure businesses that are trying to go, say, 7 or 8-figure businesses?
Get consistent first. So typically when someone's in that frame, they're what I call like a producer, which is you're producing, but you're not consistent. You're not yet a master. And once you unlock mastery, when you're able to get consistent and you're able to get consistent revenue each month, because like a lot of those companies, because I look at all their financials on a very regular basis of when people apply to work with us, it's like this. They don't have consistency. And so what is like when I'm looking at a company that I know is going to be one that maybe in the future we want to invest in, what I see is that they become consistent. They have consistent revenue month after month. And so that's a reflection of the stability in the business, which is usually a reflection of the stability in the founder. And so a lot of the times what it is that the founders can't stay focused. They can't stay focused on the right things for their business. And they're jumping around thinking like, well, maybe I should be doing this. Maybe it should be this. Like these 5 people told me 5 different things. Let me try these different things.
Yeah.
If you can stay focused and just like trust the course of at least one path, then you can see it out and see if it even works. And so I think a lot of times it's just remaining consistent for long enough to see the fruits of your labor, because if you're constantly changing priorities, what you're focused on, what your product is, the hiring and firing, then you don't ever get to actually build anything that's stable. And so oftentimes what they need to do is just continue to practice, get the reps in, really understand, like build a stable foundation for the business, and then it will naturally grow.
Yeah. What do you see as the cause or the source of this revenue or sales inconsistency? Like what do they usually have to fix to build that consistency?
People are often very impulsive. And so what I mean by that is, and I'm not immune to it. Like I was much more this way when I was younger and first getting into business, which is a lot of people tie up so much self-worth in their businesses. And then when something doesn't work for one day, they have one bad sales day or 2 bad, oh my God, a week, the business is for sure dying. That's what they think. They think bad sales day, bad marketing day, bad week, I have to change everything. And so what happens is this cycle of impulsive action, and then you overcompensate for that action, which means you impulsively do something. You don't have any foresight. You're not thinking, well, maybe this is in the plan. Okay, there's always ups and downs. Like that's logical. You just go all or nothing thinking. And then you overcompensate, which might mean if you have a bad sales week, you go in, you're like, we need to change the whole script. We need to redo our compensation structure for sure. It's messed up. That's why they're not doing this. Rather than maybe it was Memorial Day weekend and people just didn't feel like buying. Maybe it's seasonal. Maybe we don't know because the business is too small. And so that's often what happens is they're just so in such a fear mode that they change things so quickly. And then they never get to see that the problem is not the perceived problem. The problem is that.
Yeah, it's like planting a seed and then like next week be like, oh, I don't see a flower. It's done. Right. It's not going to work. Like you have to give it some time.
And it's often what I call a mentor mindset. It's like your whiplash, entrepreneurial whiplash, which is like you're constantly like going like this back and forth, like just, and your whole team feels it too. And so does the customer. So then people 100%. Feel like, oh, it's just it's not stable.
Yeah. I similar to that analogy. What I heard was like being like a monkey jumping from one branch to the other instead of just, sticking to one thing and making that, say, LinkedIn lead generation, get that to work and then move on to the next thing.
100%.
People are like, I sent 5 messages and I didn't get 6 figures out of that.
Right.
This is not working.
No,
it's like, bro,
of course LinkedIn works. You just haven't figured it out yet.
Right. Do you think there's like, what do you think are like the top, maybe 1 or 2 skills that an entrepreneur needs to like figure out or master that would help them maybe 50 or 60% of the way? It's like, these are maybe 1 or 2 important skills that you really have to have this figured out.
I think one is more of a character trait than a skill, and the other one's a skill, which is, I think that skill-wise, sales. Like you are always selling in a business. Marketing is a form of sales. Product is going to need to understand sales. When you're hiring and recruiting, it's sales. There's always sales in business. So I think understanding sales is like, I think it's one of the most important skills. And founders that don't understand it typically have a harder time than those who do. I can say that confidently. The second skill is, I would call like emotional agility, which is your reaction to your emotions. So many entrepreneurs I meet are so talented, but their skill sets are high. Maybe they're really good at sales, really good at marketing, really good at fulfillment, but their emotion, like their character traits, like their emotional agility is low. Therefore, they make stupid decisions. They take really irrational action, and then they sabotage themselves. We all know that person who's like so brilliant, but they're just always ruining something for themselves because they just take this irrational action. And so I think having emotional agility and understanding that most of the time, the threats that we see in business, the problems we see in business are made up in our heads. But if we can understand that and be like agile in how we respond to our emotions, then I think we're going to be way better off in business, because one of the number 1 things we look for in partners is like low emotional reactivity, people who can understand their emotions. And it doesn't mean you eliminate the emotions. It's that when they come up, you can react to them in a way that's productive rather than a way that's going to set you back.
Love it. Where can people find out more about you and reach out?
Yeah. Really, I think the best place to go is YouTube or Instagram. So, YouTube, you can just type in Leila Hormozi. Instagram is just at Leila and Hormozi. And then if you go to acquisition.com, we have free courses on the site where if you're an entrepreneur that's probably doing, less than 3 million a year, that course is probably a great one to make sure that you're on the right track.
Love it. So YouTube, just search for Leila Hormozi, Instagram, same. And you can go to acquisition.com. And another amazing resource that Leila and her husband, Alex, have is the book, The $100 Million Offer, which is absolutely amazing. I've read it and I've watched the videos on their website. It really works, gang. Tap into that. Leila, can I ask you some real quick personal questions before we go?
Yeah, sure.
What's a new thing you have tried recently, big or small?
That I've tried.
Some new. As little as a cup of coffee, as big as going to Mars, maybe. I don't know.
I'm like really trying to think. What is something new?
Food, drink,
New stuff
reading
all
a book.
kind of tough. I mean, I've started like saying yes to speaking recently, so I guess that's new. Because I didn't do that before.
Love it. Give me 2 of your top favorite books.
Ooh. I really like The Laws of Human Nature. I think that book is really good.
Robert Greene,
yeah. And then that's a tough one.
A book that has a big impact on business or personal life or maybe mindset.
Yeah, I think Ben Horowitz, A Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's a really good book for people to read to just understand entrepreneurship in general and like what's normal.
Amazing books. What's one advice that made a big impact in business or life?
When it gets easy is when you want to step on the gas.
It gets easy.
Step on the gas.
Step on the gas.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a quick story there.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just see it a lot in business. When something feels easy, I think people relax and then they just try to accumulate the fruits of their labor. But that's when you want to maximize and you want to hit the gas and capitalize on the opportunity.
Love it. If you had a Facebook or a Google ad where everyone around the world with access to internet could see that ad, what would your message be for the people of Earth?
It's possible for anyone. I think most of the time people just have reasons why they can't do something, but at the end of the day, it's irrelevant.
Love it. Leila, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and time with us. And gang, if you have any questions or comments for Leila or for me, feel free to put them in a comment below. Make sure to like and subscribe to the show. And have yourself a great weekend. And we look forward to seeing you next week. And you've been listening and watching Daily Confidence for Entrepreneurs with my guest, Leila Hormozi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, gang.